I'm also a fuck-ton stronger than each of you, so...
But are you stronger than all of us?
Ahoy to everyone out there in YouTube land! I had intended to deliver another charmed anatomy of an episode soon, but then a new season of Fate the Winx Saga dropped.
How crazy is that?
It took me about 3 days to binge, and it's safe to say I loved almost all of it. So I thought I'd do not just a review, but also an examination of how to take fan criticism on board without excessive pandering.
Then let me amend it.
For those who don't know, Fate is a live-action adaptation of popular 2000s magical girl cartoon Winx Club, about a boarding school for fairies as they learn to be warriors. Despite its main cast being 6 girls, with a lot of sparkles, the heavy emphasis on adventure as well as fashion, and significant male characters in the specialists meant that when it was originally airing, there was an almost even split of male and female viewers.
Awesome!
The series first premiered in 2004, intending to wrap up after 3 seasons, but its popularity led to eventually 8 being produced, as well as 3 CGI films and 2 spin-offs. If one includes the live action, this franchise has basically been active for 18 years. So you can imagine it has quite the passionate fanbase. And you can also imagine that a lot of people had some issues with Fate.
Yeah, well, too bad.
Adapting live action from animation is often seen as a way to improve or legitimize the source material, since the stigma of animation being just for kids is still very much around, but it's always tricky to actually pull off well. As I said in my video on Sabrina the Animated Series, animation is a much freer medium in lots of ways, especially for the fantasy genre. You can accomplish things in 2D that will be all sorts of tricky to pull off in live action, so in trading the freedom of one medium, you need to make up for it with the advantages of the new one.
Close your eyes!
I'll admit, I enjoyed the first season of Fate for what it was. I watched the season twice, and I was excited for the second, but I also paid attention to the criticisms, a lot of which I agreed with.
Anything that keeps you sane in this place is the ability to leave it.
The characterization I'll get to in a bit, but the one that stuck out to me was how the cartoon was emblematic of the early 2000s in how bright, bold and colourful it was. From the fashion to even how the characters were designed off the pop culture figures of the day, Winx Club is as much a time capsule of the era as Andy Warhol's paintings are of the 60s. The late 2010s, when Fate was first conceived, however, were more stripped back and subtle, with the genre films trying to be as realistic as possible, and a lot of costume designers in the 2010s seemed determined to make their characters dress like 30-something school teachers. So in trying to move with the times, Fate lost some of what made its source material unique.
I think I just threw up.
But the big one is unfortunately a startling lack of awareness in audience response.
This week, Hollywood whitewashing. How is this still a thing?
Diversity continues to be a hot-button issue in films and TV today, since we didn't get a female-led superhero film until 2017, and a black-led MCU film until 2018, with the common line from studio higher-ups being, "It doesn't sell." But TV has always been different to film, and it's on the small screen that we've tended to see better representation, and that's why Winx Club was so beloved.
Oh yes, we took a big risk!
You had a lineup of 6 protagonists, only 3 of whom were white, and even Stella is designed in such a way that she resembles blonde Latinas like Cameron Diaz and Sofia Vergara. So Netflix, in a move that I'm not entirely sure wasn't intended as outrage-fueled publicity, dropped the Latina Flora and replaced her with a white girl called Terra.
I've got this cousin called Flora.
Further accusations of whitewashing were lobbied at the casting of Alicia Applebaum as the Chinese-coded Musa.
I hate you. I will always hate you. I hate your children. I hate your children's children.
And I'm not going to play online paper bag tests, but she may be at least part Singaporean, so I will leave that there.
Will you stop talking?
I will affirm that I did still enjoy Season 1 overall, even knowing and agreeing with these criticisms. Fun fact, I did background work as a specialist and may have been up for a couple of roles in Season 2, but despite the copious lack of me in the season, I actually quite enjoyed it, and I appreciated the course correction. Season 1's colour palette was pretty muted, where the intent seemed to be a stripped-back, down-to-earth realism, which, I get it. It'd be hard to make capes look good or practical in scenes where actual people have to perform stunts in them, but I had to roll my eyes at how dull these things were. While the clothes themselves were fine, the colour grading itself made things look a lot duller, and they went extremely conventional in each character's colour scheme, putting Bloom in red because she's a fire fairy, Aisha in blue because she's water, Terra in green, yada yada yada, when even the cartoon didn't do this. In Season 2, the grading is already much brighter and bolder for the most part, and even in scenes where darkness and seriousness is needed, they use the colour in a way to complement the tone rather than just muting everything. Even in the cinematography, the season feels more lighthearted and escapist, while still maintaining the darker, maturer feel that they wanted.
Doesn't matter.
The specialist uniforms get redesigned, and even though they're all black now, they feel closer to the spirit of the cartoon.
You know, I hate 99% of Rosalind's changes, but these uniforms.
Bloom is no longer decked in red all the time and wears a lot of blue outfits, which was her signature colour in the original. Especially noteworthy is this gown that also provides some female eye candy to balance out all the gratuitous shirtlessness. The wardrobes overall are much bolder and more interesting, evoking the essence of the early 2000s nicely. Maybe they can take some inspiration from Charmed for Season 3. But that's enough about the aesthetics, let's get down to the characters. I was not one of those people who hated Bloom in the first season.
I am a fairy. Sorry, that's just something I never thought I would say.
I like what Abigail Cowan does in the role, and her style of acting makes it believable that this otherwise dazzling beauty would be an outsider in her homeworld.
And if you really want your mind blown, 3 months ago, I didn't even know the other world existed.
But I can admit that the narrative favoured her a lot, and would often bend to her motivation in some of the ways that made me dislike Prue Halliwell back in the day.
I don't need help.
This was a problem in the original cartoon as well, and with only 6 episodes to roll with, it was much more obvious for some.
So that's why Bloom was able to transform so easily.
Season 2 has an extra episode that does allow the different subplots a chance to breathe, as well as making room for more focus on the others, which is also helped by Bloom's main backstory already being covered in the previous season.
Human parents, fairy daughter.
While she could come across as very self-serving there, the theme for Season 2 is the importance of self-sacrifice.
You'll carry that burden forever.
Bloom's arc in the first few episodes is learning that she can't resort to her previous tactic of recklessly flying solo around the school, and she has to face consequences of her past behaviour now that she's got a headmistress who's far less lenient than Farah.
I wonder what she'd say if she knew that you and your friends attacked her caravan and broke out Soul Silver.
Bloom has to learn to put the greater good ahead of her own desires, and play the game for the ultimate benefit of the team.
Tell me how to get her magic back.
Selfless. I'm impressed.
And as the season continues and she finds out that Rosalind killed Farah,
She's dead. Rosalind killed her.
she loses control and kills Rosalind. The show doesn't offer her a way out either, with Bloom admitting that she could have held back her magic, but chose to punish Rosalind instead.
In that moment I did. I wanted her dead.
And so, she faces the consequences.
I will accept the consequences to my actions.
And when Farah returns briefly to act as a spirit advisor, in a scene which I admit gave me the warm fuzzies,
Miss Darling?
Hello, Bloom.
she doesn't use this time to get Bloom off the hook for what she did. Rather, she gives the girls the information they need to win the battle, teaching Bloom in particular the importance of serving everyone's best interests instead of just her own.
The more I learn about it, the more it scares me.
I'm sure it does. But you have to use it. One way or another.
Rather than Season 1 rewarding her flying solo, here the day isn't saved until the fairies work as a team, as sometimes self-sacrifice also means relinquishing control and letting others share the load.
Remember, you don't have to do this alone.
And Bloom's arc this season reaches its conclusion when she's faced with a contrasting sacrifice that this time only she can make.
Do you know what's on the other side?
Crossing into the realm of darkness to close the portal and thus giving up everything for the greater good.
This is bigger than us.
Obviously, she's going to get answers about her parents, but that's more of an interesting plot thread set up for season 3. On to Stella? I think most of us are in agreement that Stella was the worst thing about season 1. Even me, who enjoyed mostly all of it, still can't work out the choices made with her.
I hear you're broken. In more ways than one.
Changing her from a lovable Cher Horowitz figure to a generic alpha bitch was just a very lazy move by someone who possibly doesn't understand how to write feminine characters without making them mean.
And don't use my title as an insult.
While Stella is humbled in the season, I still didn't have much sympathy with her.
You say you don't want to be like your mother, but all I see is someone who treats others exactly the same way that Luna treats you.
So the damage control of this season is to repeatedly torture her and knock her down several pegs so that one can't help but feel sorry for her.
Like, go to therapy or something?
It's in this season that you can properly work out the idea the writers may have been going for.
I don't need them. I've got you.
The friendship between the girls in the cartoon was instantaneous, since it was for kids and character development wasn't really the order of the era, and possibly they felt that a maturer audience would prefer to see it form over time and characters grow into their personas across a couple of seasons.
I thought it didn't matter what other people thought.
I can't say I agree with the idea of having Stella begin as a shameless mean girl, but I was invested in her development into becoming a good friend for sure.
Maybe I'm just sick of being frozen out.
This season leans into the idea that Stella is the opposite of a little girl's princess fantasy.
All those fairy tales about princesses trapped inside castles. And not one of them has a princess torturing herself to get out.
The only princess in this series is the one with an abusive mother.
Mum, do not speak when I'm speaking.
In addition to the psychological abuse Luna inflicts on her by way of pressure to succeed and present a certain image to the public, Stella now has to endure physical abuse that restricts her magic and where she can go. And now that we can see more of what Luna does to Stella rather than having to guess, we can fill in the blanks and understand that Stella's behaviour is consistent with a survivor of trauma.
And a suite full of sympathy and pity makes my skin crawl.
Shutting people out, afraid to be vulnerable, clinging to failed past relationships, all very realistic responses to abuse.
Because you really don't know the half of it.
We also see that Stella clearly resents her mother's actions, but in some way still craves her approval.
I was very proud of you.
The friendship that develops between her and Beatrix was a highlight as well, with both of them being interesting foils for each other.
My situation is equally, if not more, fucked up.
Oh, sorry, are we having some sort of trauma off here?
Girl who has no family and wants it, alongside girl who has family and hates it, both trying to survive in their own way.
I have no one, Stella, no one in the entire world. You had me.
And Farah's advice on transformation magic is actually quite beneficial for Stella's recovery.
You must make peace with all your emotions. The reckless joy of the positive and the despair of the negative.
Trauma can often lead to people repressing or denying certain feelings and emotions as a coping mechanism, and women in particular are often taught to deny negative emotions like anger and jealousy. But a major part of healing is learning to feel all your feelings and process them in a healthy way, and that's why Stella is able to transform and put her magic to good use, in the service of a friend.
No, Blue, we're not leaving you.
While I'm still not sure what to make of Hannah van der Westhuizen in the role, I will admit she brings it in these emotional moments.
Sacrifice yourself.
So with all this character derailment and subsequent rerailment, I feel like Season 3 will show us the Stella we all know and love. Next. Aisha was my favourite of the Winx girls in the first season, and Precious Mustafa really sold me on this aloof overachiever who is in no way malicious in how she prefers to stick to the rules.
Dowling has the creature locked up, which you would know if you were here last night when she gave us an earful.
Aisha was a great character. The problem, however, was that she ended up stuck in the dreaded role of supportive best friend.
I'm done pulling you from the edge, Bloom.
The narrative focusing mostly on Bloom meant that Aisha was a satellite character who existed to be needed by the others, giving Bloom the exposition she needs, facilitating Musa talking to Sam, and telling the others when they're messing up.
You want to see the headmistress at midnight wasted? Go for it.
Like many black characters in children's and young adult media, she's near flawless, so the show can't be accused of bad representation.
I get the idea.
While there are glimmers of an independent character waiting to break out, if you ask the question, what does Aisha do in the story when she's not busy being the best friend? The answer is probably just swimming or studying. She was a great character, but there just wasn't enough of her.
Yeah, I'd keep my distance.
Season 2 fixes this by giving her a romance subplot that's entirely for herself, and this is accompanied by the reverse of the previous season,
Aisha.
where now there are scenes where Aisha needs the others.
Do not use your goals as an excuse. This is deeper than that.
She has to be encouraged to loosen up by Bloom, advised on love by Flora, consoled after finding out the truth about Grey by everyone, showing that Aisha needs them just as much as they need her.
I don't like to do things I'm not good at, and I'm not good at this stuff.
We get to see her be vulnerable and admit that she's never had a relationship because of her need to succeed.
What if I end up making sacrifices for something I'm going to fail at?
There are now scenes that are all about her, where she's the driving focus, and the others are there to support her.
Trust me, falling for someone is not something to protect yourself from.
This helps make Aisha feel like an independent person, and an equal with the other girls. And of course, she gets to be a really active character who takes charge and saves the day multiple times.
Timing is everything.
I got such a good feeling in this transformation sequence, especially with Aisha being the first one to take it to Sebastian.
You're a monster.
She ends the season in a really interesting place, heartbroken over how her first relationship turned out, but still conflicted about how Grey did the right thing in the end, and grieving the loss of her best friend. We already had a great character, and they finally did great things with her. Next. I didn't hate Terra as a character, even if she was there instead of Flora.
Shocker, a fairy called Terra likes plants.
I think Elliot Salt brings a lot of charm that makes her neurosis endearing rather than annoying, and yay for there being a northern protagonist in a sea of RP and American accents.
Let's all of us just blanket statement. Who cares?
As of season 2, this character is now caught in a sort of mini avalanche of diversity to justify another white girl in the cast. Plus-sized up against the more conventionally slimmer frames, a northern accent reminding viewers that not everyone in the UK speaks like this.
So presumptuous. You must be a fairy.
And now?
I'm gay.
I mean, sure, this matches her actress, although it still seems as though the writers forget that bisexuality is a thing too. She could have pined for Dane and still liked girls as well.
No, I've done it again. I've misread this. I'm so sorry. That is mortifying. You didn't misread anything.
The romance subplot here did feel a bit shoehorned in, which I can appreciate was probably to avoid more criticisms. If she comes out and doesn't get a girl, then we might get complaints of tokenism. Complaints about an underdeveloped romance are easier to take and improve come the next season. And hey, we got a big mainstream show reminding the world that there are mixed-race Irish people out there too, and an Irish character played by an Irish actress getting to keep her accent.
You're fucking amazing.
But back to Terra, I feel as though her presence in the show is sometimes ignored or trivialized.
People always think that they can treat the big girl like shit.
Hollywood beauty standards are still very much a thing, and while less people are trying to attain the heroin chic look that was in during the 90s, performers who aren't Hollywood actress skinny are often attacked for even existing. And when you do see larger women in mainstream films, it's usually as the funny best friend or some kind of sassy side character.
Because we're sweet and we're harmless and we should be happy that you're even talking to us.
Terra may not be the lead in Fate, but she's still a lead who can have her own story, be it about family, romance, friendship, or saving the day.
And most of all, we are not harmless.
At the very least, she shows that big girls can be the hero too. Oh, and she makes mention of studying mineral magic, which hints that the Winx will be able to have power over gemstones in future episodes like they did in the cartoon. Next. And the original Fairy of Nature finally makes her appearance, and it was glorious.
But weirdly, we have the same crooked pinkies.
Paulina Chavez was just perfect in this role.
But you'll barely even notice me, I promise. I can be invisible.
In this event, the writers also understood that hardcore Winx fans were already anxious about getting Flora onto the show, so they don't waste time playing her as an outsider who has to earn the friendships of the others, and they slot her right into being part of the main cast.
Flora, you're saving my life.
They even emphasise that Terra is a little insecure about her more brilliant cousin.
She seems like the quiet one, but she definitely does her own thing.
And with 2 Earth fairies on the show, they do quite well at distinguishing their powers and approaches to magic. Terra is given the plant manipulation and mineral magic, and while Flora has that too, her expertise in the cartoon was always healing, revitalising, and making the right potions. So it was very fitting that Flora be the one to temporarily revive Farah through her magic and knowledge.
This little guy was absorbing every piece of life essence he could. In the first world, they're called resurrection plants.
And while some of her actions aren't necessarily canon accurate, they are effective.
Aisha, we're designed to fall in love.
Like, it was actually Aisha giving Flora the love talk in season 2 of the cartoon, but this still works in the live action.
Losing control is the best part.
And it was honestly one of my favourite scenes in the whole series.
And yes, it'll probably end. And yes, when it does, it could be the worst feeling ever. But that's life too. Don't push life away.
Flora is a good demonstration of how to introduce a beloved character but still not rely too much on fan service and overshadow what the main series has already built up. The main protagonists have their own subplots and motivations, and Flora slots into that very nicely.
All my people in one place. Still can't believe how lucky I am.
We know plenty about her, she gets to be an independent presence, and she contributes to the action in multiple ways.
This is my home now too, Terra. I'm not just gonna hide in here while you risk yourselves and try to transform.
Sure, she gets left out of the transformation sequence, as does Musa, but that was more for the girls who'd been there since the beginning.
I'm distilling a pheromone of my magic to attract the scrapers to me.
She still got to play her part through attracting the scrapers and injecting herself with poison that would kill them.
When they feed on me, they'll die.
And her last moment of the season shows that this is not going to be brushed aside.
Be honest, does it hurt? Like hell.
I'm already intrigued over what direction they'll take Flora in afterwards, because this was a very fine debut. Next. Beatrix was already one of the most popular characters of Season 1, half for Sadie Soverall's great performance, and half for that razor-sharp wit.
A vape. Every time you seem cool, you say something that ruins it.
As a set note, this line was very famous among the extras.
So get off me, you massive pedo!
Now, as much as we love Beatrix and her shade, I'd be lying if I didn't say she was a tad one-dimensional.
I wonder if anyone will believe you.
Manipulative villain who wants revenge for what happened in her hometown. Simple, not much to it, but she works it well.
You might not be trying to sound mysterious, but you are succeeding.
Season 2 takes her in a much more interesting direction.
My situation is equally, if not more, fucked up.
While in an antagonistic role, she becomes aware of how much of a pawn she is in whatever game Andreas and Rosalind are playing, and she's far too independent to just be someone's minion. So Beatrix continues her scheming to become a major player herself.
I'm an orphaned, magicless fairy relegated to chore duties to stay at the school. A little secret might brighten my day.
She could help Rosalind, or she could help the Winx, as long as it benefits her.
You really think you can play both sides, don't you?
I like that they drifted towards making her sympathetic without giving her a full-on face turn.
I told you I was going to do whatever it took to survive.
Beatrix is a great bad girl, and she reminds me more of Poison Ivy or Catwoman, where she may help the heroes if it serves her own agenda or the greater good. Like, sure, she'll kill someone if she has to, but she's not going to let the world be destroyed. She's not a monster.
He really cares about you.
I'm aware. It's cloying.
I like the friendship, or at least allyship, that developed between her and Stella, both victims of toxic upbringings and trying to reclaim power for themselves, and how it's Beatrix who gives Stella the kick up the arse she needs to put the mission before the man.
Sky's life is not worth more than every other life in the other world.
She really was best suited to a wild card than an outright villain.
Yeah, I just saved the world. Gotta admit, feels pretty good.
And if you think that sudden death is going to stick and we've seen the last of Sadie Soverall, well, I got a bridge to sell you somewhere.
I have 2 sisters.
I think when she revealed this, I may have actually gone, oh. And as you can see on the paper, her sisters are Darcy and Isabel. With Beatrix having powers over lightning, that would make her Stormy, and Isabel the full name for Icy.
Didn't know the full story, but he knew I had 2 sisters.
It'll be very interesting to see how they incorporate this part of the mythology. Next. There's not a lot to go further into detail on, but there's still plenty to praise.
Did you kill her here?
A little to your right.
The recasting of Rosalind was a good move, since I really didn't like Leslie Sharp's performance in the first season, and it seemed like she thought she was on a different show.
Primal. The dragon flame.
Miranda Richardson is always great, and thankfully makes Rosalind less of a caricature, and is more subtle, and actually believable as someone who Bloom might think she has to trust.
If you really want to change the world for the better, you have to be capable of anything.
I was surprised that she was killed off so soon, but I kind of prefer that rather than keeping her around too long and contriving ways for the main characters to not find out what she's done.
In the back of your mind, you can't imagine that exact thing happening.
Sebastian was a fun villain, I have to say, and I'll admit I didn't see his heel turn coming.
I watch a ton of 90s sitcoms. I'm pretty sure I know how families work.
Aina Hardwick gets a nice blend between naturalistic and the ham we need from a bad guy.
Okay, I'm sorry. The deal was, you give me the dragon flame, I give you your answers.
It felt profoundly satisfying seeing four fairies transform and take him out, so that's how I know he did a good job.
Creepy old book for a lifetime of magic. Wonder who's getting the raw end of that deal.
Grey was a fine addition to the cast, and how often do you see an Asian man cast as the sexy love interest?
And my eyes are up here.
This might make me sound like a peasant, but I didn't telegraph him being the mole.
But Sebastian told him that he could bring my brother back to life.
Said stop.
He fit in fine as a satellite character with just enough motivation to understand him, and with enough layers for his saving Sky to actually feel like something.
Boy came through. It's over. No more fighting.
Dane I'm not sure what to make of as a character, and there definitely seems to be some material that probably got left out when they cut the planned 8 episodes down to 7.
I used to think there was way more to it than this.
I get the feeling he's supposed to be disliked, since I got a real kick out of Beatrix telling him off.
You can do literally anything. He will never love you.
But he's apparently moved on with a new guy called Luke, so I think he was meant to be redeemed. Hopefully he gets to be involved with the possible Trix storyline in Season 3, which can hopefully get some proper direction for this character.
Afraid of being beaten by a gun?
Riv?
No.
After a tease of Musa and Riven in Season 1, they're actually building towards it now, and there's some nice chemistry between them. I didn't dislike Sam as a character, but I feel writing him off was a good move. And even though Musa is training to become a specialist, the repeated statements that she can hear other people's emotions rather than feel them give me a theory that she will eventually find a way to channel that into music and sound-based magic like she has in the cartoon. The Andreas plot seems like it was shortchanged somewhat, and another possible casualty of having 7 episodes instead of 8, and unlike Rosalind's death, his felt a little out of left field.
You was gonna kill Silver, I didn't have a choice.
Perhaps they thought it would be impossible to keep Bloom in the game after she killed Rosalind, since Andreas would obviously want more direct revenge on her, but I think it would have been nicer for his death to be placed closer to the end. Maybe he tries to kill Bloom behind Luna's back, and Sky is forced to kill him to save his girlfriend, thus reinforcing the family of choice theme of the series. But if anything else, Rob James Collier is a delight as always, and they gave Danny Griffin a much better haircut.
Go Frolic.
And finally, I have to praise the fight choreography and the action scenes overall, especially in the finale.
Look at you, proving me wrong.
It was nice and action-packed, giving a good payoff to what had been built up over the season, making this feel more like Charmed Season 3 and not Season 2.
You kind of died.
So, as you can probably tell, I enjoyed the HE double hockey sticks out of Fate the Winx Saga's sophomore year, and I see the show's quality going up in spite of the tepid reviews the first season got.
You're a monster!
Oh, grow up.
It feels as though the creators wanted to acknowledge the criticisms and work with them in a way that was still organic to what was already created.
Could do with a bit more colour, but I suppose form over function.
Contrast how Game of Thrones responded to the criticism of the Sand Snakes.
You want a good girl, but you need a bad pussy.
Rather than attempting to actually fix the characters or bring them closer to how they'd been in the source material when they were actually liked, they just had more popular characters trash talk them and gave them gruesome deaths. Almost like trying to make the fans forget that they created these characters in the first place.
Anything from you? No. Good.
I'm not going to pretend that either incarnation of Winx was some kind of highbrow piece that warrants such serious academic discussion, but I also won't ignore that both versions still contain a lot of value, and now that Fate is doing a lot more right than wrong, I think that is definitely worth praising.
The people you love, the people you care about. If you use your power for that, you can never go wrong.